Hey everybody, Aaron here. Welcome back to another anime review. Today we look at March Comes Like a Lion, episode 22, which is also, of course, the season finale, unfortunately. But don't fret. October, there's going to be a continuation of the series. We're going to see more of it. I'm so happy about that. That was announced earlier today, so you can see it online. Probably it's not that hard to find. I retweeted it on my Twitter, so you can follow me on Twitter if you needed information about that. But I'm so happy about that because I love this show. And guess what? This last episode was probably one of my favorites of the series so far. It was so well done. It was so well executed. It almost reminded me of like a before and after type of story, and it was just all the better for it. I really love this episode. It was such a fitting way to end the season. So with always, as I do with my last episode review for something, I'm going to talk a little bit about the actual last episode, but I want to talk about the whole show in general and give my thoughts about it as a wrap up score. So episode 22 was very simple, ironically. I feel like I say that all the time in my reviews, and I don't mean to say that with this show specifically, but it's a very simple concept. We have him in the beginning, which is more so focused at school and how he's a really just a loner still. Ray has always been a loner for the most part, but despite that, what's interesting is that despite his solidarity at school, he's really not by himself. And that's what we see more toward the end of the episode. But it's important that we know that he ends up making like a shogi club with the after school club, which is a science club. So they're like the after science something. I forgot exactly how they named it, but it was the science club fusing with a shogi club. It goes to show that Ray thinks he's a loner, but by nature he has a lot of things that other people seek in him too. Just because he's 1 year held back because of him focusing so much on shogi and stuff like that doesn't mean he's by himself. And I think that was really a very strong point to give to people too in general, because everyone who is, I think, considered a loner in school or considered lonely in school in general, they think that because there's no one that they could talk to, or they feel like there's no one around them to understand what they're going through. And I'll say that is so far from the truth. Every school, no matter what school I've ever seen, even with other people that I know, etc., there's always one other person there somewhere that will understand you for who you are. And it's something that it scares people because they're not willing to talk up. They're afraid of the ridicule, they're afraid of the rejection. But Ray, while he's still afraid of that, realizes that no matter what, he's always been leading into this kind of, and as he put it, almost like a train of sorts. Where, and this is what I loved about this episode, where at the end he shows all the people that he's been meeting along the way. His friends, his enemies, his rivals, etc., his mentors. And he's been seeing that even though he is on the train by himself in the route of life, he's not by himself because he has people with him that are taking that same train forward. That to me was one of the best statements I think of any anime I've seen in my life, because it's such a beautiful statement. It's such a beautiful phrase. I loved it. You know, I we'll say right now about the show. This show has hit a possible note of being one of my favorite shows of all time. It wasn't perfect. It had some issues here and there. Obviously, there were some episodes that felt a little bit filler-esque. There were a few episodes that were a little weaker than other ones. But 9 times out of 10, out of the 22 episode run of this show, every episode had something for you to either maybe talk about life, or maybe just to kind of describe Ray's life, or to see something from someone else's perspective, so we get a kind of nuance of life. Like I said, with the whole train and him being by himself and yet going forward with other people, that's so realistic, because that's really how we are as human beings. In many ways, we are alone for a long time in our life without realizing it. Before we get spouses, before anything like that, kids, etc., we are by ourselves going forward. And there are people that we meet along the way that are doing the same thing. Maybe they are with family, maybe they're not with family, but they are doing the same exact thing we're doing, is by going forward and moving on to their lives and trying to better themselves. And despite this being a series about shogi, despite this being a series about the loss of one's family and having to deal with that as a person, that this show has always propelled forward a true nuance to explain how life should be handled by people. And for that, I really dig this show. I really do love it. Story-wise, the story was always amazing by the show. I loved the main characters. I loved the concepts. It's a very simple execution. It's not anything that hasn't been done before, but the way they approached it and kind of throwing in a kind of regular board game into it was interesting, because in many ways you can almost see shogi as being the supplementary concept. You know, it's the concept that it's there. Yeah, obviously this whole anime is about shogi, but it's really not. It's focused on everything but the game itself, which is ironic enough. It seems like it should be only focused on shogi. Like you hear Ray talk about it nonstop, but in many ways, all the stuff that's happening around him, all the episodes we get, if you really look at it, how much was actually of shogi played in the series? Not very much, in truth. That's the funny part about it. Um, Animation wise, you know, Shaft did an amazing job. It's I'm always expecting Shaft to really pull out nonstop performances with their work. You know, they've always done that with everything, Bakuman, Guitar, etc. But you know, this is one show that, you know, they didn't do the same stuff that we usually kind of make fun of them for, with, you know, the neck turns and stuff like that. They had it here and there once in a while, but it was such a beautiful show because it sometimes looked like it was watercolored, and other times it looked very very different of how some characters looked at their faces and their emotional concepts. You know, a lot of people kind of complained about some faces, like, you know, with the lines, the lips and all that, and I was like, that's never an issue to me. That was never a big deal to me. I thought that was just fine. It was just a way of doing character design. I love the character design personally. I loved all the characters. They all had this unique feeling of not being too unrealistic, in the sense of like, oh, this is an anime, you know, we have characters with super spike hair and all. No, these characters I can almost see in real life. That's pretty cool. Music wise, I love the music. I think the opening for the first season was way better than the opening for the second season, but they both had their impact. And I thought the first season, just having, you know, Bump and Chicken do both the opening and closing, was really cool. It was a great idea on their part. You know, it was a very good contrast to having a very, I would say, darker tone beginning and then kind of a lighter tone ending of sorts. Overall, though, March Comes Like Line probably has to be one of the shows that I didn't know what to expect from going into it. You know, like I was looking at the show and I'm like, I don't know if the show's gonna be that good, or if it's gonna be interesting or whatever. It blew me away. It slapped me across the face and went, no, I want to make sure you think this show's gonna be amazing, and it really did an amazing job of that. Because honestly, I'll just say this right now. I'll put it very simple. This show is definitely one of my top like 100 shows I've ever watched in my life. You know, it's I didn't know if anything could reach that same standard, because a lot of times, a lot of the shows that I've have on my list are very hard to break into the molding of, you know, top 100 to me. But this definitely went in there. So honestly, with that being said, what do I give this show? I give this show, if I had to rate between an A through F, an A plus. You know, I was originally talking to my friend earlier today. I was gonna say, oh, I'm gonna give it an A because I think it's a little weaker here or there sometimes, and I don't know how if I want to give this a perfect score. It deserves a perfect score. I think this is a masterpiece, to be honest with you. Anyways, guys and girls, please leave in the comments, what are your thoughts? Are you happy about another season coming out? I would love to hear from you guys. As always, if you love my reviews, please show some support. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, share the video, etc. I will talk to you later. Till our paths crossing in the next review. Have a beautiful day, everyone. God bless you all. Bye-bye.